Welcome. Tonight, we cast off, not with thunder, but with quiet reflection. In the stillness of your room, perhaps with only the low hum of a night lamp or the slow breath of sleep approaching, we invite you to travel far back in time, to the lands of long winters and longer silences, to fjords and frozen fields, to the wind-chilled coastlines of Scandinavia, where the people known to history as the Vikings once lived not just as raiders or warriors, but as farmers, fishers, herders, and craftsmen. These were lives shaped by hardship and simplicity, by traditions passed from calloused hands to eager ones, by cold winds that carved their stories into the very bones of the land. Their stories were not always ones of conquest, but of survival, of families huddled beside turf fires, of frost-covered hands digging root vegetables from stubborn soil, of worn boots walking the same path to the same frozen shore year after year. Here, we set aside the clang of swords and the fire of raids, and instead listen more closely to the quieter rhythms of their lives, their labors, their endurance. These were people who worked not for praise or riches, but to see another season. They toiled in snow-covered fields. They tended sheep on wind-battered cliffs. They carved out lives one rough stone and worn blade at a time. Their children grew up learning not only how to wield an axe, but how to mend a net, salt a fish, and survive the winter with little more than faith and fire. And even in the long summer days, when the sun lingered over green hills, the work did not stop, it simply changed. Tonight's journey is not into conquest, but into perseverance. We begin in the chill dawn, beside a narrow fjord, where you have taken up the role of a Viking shipwright. You will not be known, you will not be praised, but without your hands, no warrior sails, no merchant trades, no explorer crosses the sea. The ship begins with you. The saga may not speak your name, but it is your labor that launches it. Let's walk, slowly and quietly, into that world.
Imagine yourself in the early stillness of a Nordic morning. It is not yet light, but already the landscape hums with the slow quiet of winter breath. The fjord lies still, frozen around the edges, like a cup left too long outside. There is a faint rustle from the trees lining the high cliffs, and the crows have begun to stir, their wings flapping in the distant dark. Your home, a small wooden hall just above the shoreline, is cold. The fire in the hearth has long since died down to ash. You pull your cloak tighter around your shoulders and swing your legs down from the straw mat where you sleep. Your back aches, the kind of ache that settles in men who bend over timber for a living and never quite straightens again. You are a shipbuilder, not the kind of man remembered in sagas or named in ballads. Your hands do not carry a sword. They carry chisels, draw knives, hammers. They carry pitch, sawdust, and fatigue. The great longships that glide across oceans that reach the shores of distant lands, bringing warriors and merchants and explorers. None of them move without you. You will never ride with them, but they begin with your back, your blisters, your judgment, and your breath. You rise in silence because everyone in the house is still asleep. Your wife lies curled beside the children on the platform above the hearth. You glance at them in the dimness. Her feet are tucked under the youngest tunic. One of the children has their thumb in their mouth. Another breathes loudly through their nose. There is peace in this moment, even as the cold bites your fingers. You wrap an old woolen scarf around your neck, pull on your leather boots, stiff with yesterday's snow, and step outside. The air greets you like a slap, sharp and fresh. You inhale slowly. You can smell pine smoke drifting from another house. Farther up the slope, you can smell salt, to the ever-present memory of the fjord, always breathing, even when frozen. Your path to the yard is well worn. Crushed reeds, flattened moss, and your own footprints layered beneath new snow. Your worksite is not large, not a shipyard, not like the ones in Hedeby or Burka. Here, it's a simple wooden frame structure, open on one side, built beside a wide patch of flattened earth. Beneath it lies your current ship, half-formed. Its skeleton lies bare ribs, arching up into the sky like some ancient creature. Around it are your tools, axes, mallets, curved knives, iron rivets in cloth pouches. There is sawdust frozen to the ground like frost. There are offcuts of timber, bark, and shavings all scattered. Like relics, you begin by checking the moisture in the wood. You run your fingers along the strakes, the long planks that will one day form the hull. You know them all. Each one you cut yourself. You remember the day you found the tree. It came from an oak, old and quiet, its roots curled around stone. You cut it carefully, not too fast. You respected it. Then you and two others dragged the trunk down from the hill, rolling it over logs, grunting in rhythm. That was an autumn. It's been seasoning ever since. Now it's ready. You sharpen your draw knife with slow, steady strokes. The sound is familiar. Stone against steel, smooth and scraping. Then you begin carving, pulling long curls of wood toward your chest. The shavings are warm when they fall, but quickly cool as they settle on the frozen ground. You shape the plank edge carefully, tapering it to overlap the one beneath. It's called clinker built, overlapping boards riveted together for strength and flexibility. Each board must curve precisely, hugging the lines of the ribs. A bad fit means water. Water means death. You work in rhythm, carve, fit, check, pull, adjust, fit again. There is no music, no talking, just the steady hiss of blade on oak, the occasional caw of a gull overhead, and the whistle of wind through the gaps in the wooden beams above you. By midday, your hands are sore. You stop to stretch. You flex your fingers and listen to the joints crack. You rub them with grease from a pouch you keep tucked near your belt. Sheep, fat, and ash stinks, but it works. You eat alone. A flat oat cake, a piece of dried fish, a few sips of sour beer. You sit on an overturned bucket and stare out at the fjord. The water is beginning to thaw. Soon, the ships will sail again. Soon, the warriors will return or leave again. Their boots are always on the move. Yours are. Not your neighbors know you only in passing. They nod when you pass, sometimes offer you fish in exchange for small wooden items, a bowl, a comb, a doorframe. But they don't ask you about your work. Shipbuilding is sacred. Everyone needs it. No one quite understands it. Not really. After lunch, you return to the keel. The keel is everything. The spine. If it's wrong, the ship will drift crooked. If it's warped, it'll crack in the surf. You carved it weeks ago, carefully selecting a tree whose natural bend would give you strength with the least shaping. The ends curve upward slightly, like a smile or a snarl, depending on how tired you are when you look at it. It took 4 men to position it, laying it along wooden blocks to keep it off the damp earth. Now, you check the balance again, adjusting tiny wedges under the supports, making sure it rests true. The ribs rise from this spine like the bones of a beast, bent and steamed into place, each one shaped by fire and muscle. You remember that day, too, hauling the green wood into the steaming pit. You burned damp moss and wet wood for hours to make the steam rise. Your skin felt boiled. Your breath tasted of smoke. One rib cracked as you bent it. You had to start over. But now they all rise cleanly, graceful, strong. You work beside them, now smoothing a plank to match their curve. The smell of resin and sap is thick in your nose. Your hands are blackened with pitch. A droplet of it hangs from your sleeve like an earring. You don't bother wiping it off. By now, your clothes are stiff with it. Your skin too. A neighbor's child wanders by. She watches you from a distance, eyes wide. You nod. She says nothing. The sound of your blade shaving oak echoes in the stillness between you. In the evenings, you sometimes sit with your youngest, showing him small bits of what you do. You carve a tiny model ship together, just 3 ribs and a block for a keel. He presses his fingers to the wood and smiles, tracing the lines you've made. He doesn't speak much either. None of your children do. Not while you're home. You've never been a talkative man. You don't need to be your wife boils onions and dried fish. The smell fills the house. You eat in silence, staring into the fire, blinking slowly, letting the warmth ease your neck. She asks how the work goes. You say it holds. That's enough. At night, your dreams are quiet but persistent. You hear creaking wood, rushing water, the hiss of pitch on fire. Once you dreamed a plank warped and the ship took on water. The whole crew shouting, blaming your name. You woke up with your fist clenched. You don't dream of sailing. You don't want to. The sea is cruel and changes quickly. You know what happens to ships when they're poorly made. You've seen what comes back on the tide. You've seen shattered hulls. You've seen oars drift in alone. You've seen shields float like broken promises, so you work carefully, meticulously, with reverence. Each rivet must be exact. You heat them in a small forge near the worksite using charcoal and goat bellows. You count them. You line them up. You place each one through a hole drilled cleanly through the overlapping planks. Then hammer them from inside with a square-headed maul, while an apprentice holds a wedge outside. The clink of iron on iron sings across the fjord. 1,000 times 1,000 tiny hymns to precision. The days pass, and the ship slowly becomes real. The hull takes form. The prow rises. You carve its curve with care, not for beauty, though beauty comes of necessity, but for function. It must cut the water like a blade. It must ride low enough to be stable, but high enough to surf the waves. You trace old shapes, sacred shapes. Some shipbuilders carve dragon heads at the prow to ward off spirits. You do not. Not this time. The jarl sponsoring the vessel believes in simpler designs. Practical, anonymous, silent on the water like a shadow. The weather shifts. Rain comes, then snow. You wrap your tools in hide and work under the shelter of a sagging roof. Bent over the growing vessel, like a parent over a crib. Your knees hurt. Your hands are wrapped in linen. You use your elbows when your fingers cramp. Sometimes you whisper to the wood. You don't know why. Maybe it's superstition. Maybe habit. Or maybe it's because this work feels like prayer. Some mornings, the river is frozen solid and you have to chip a hole just to get water. Your breath fogs around your beard and your fingertips sting through the cloth. Still, you show up. Because if you don't, no one will. There is no one else to finish what you've begun. By now, the community has taken note. One man asks if you'll build a boat for his son. Another asks if his cousin may apprentice with you. You nod politely, but your thoughts are elsewhere. Ship must be done by the thaw. The ice is already retreating. Soon, the waters will open. You shape it slowly, sanding it smooth, weighting the bottom slightly for balance. You test it in water, watching how it turns. You adjust. You file. You check again. Then comes the sail, woven from wool, dyed a deep brownish red. It's heavy. It smells like lanolin and smoke. You hoist it once, just to be sure it fits. It does. The mast holds. The wind catches it, and the ship rocks slightly on its cradle, as if already impatient to leave. The day of the launch is gray and quiet. The fjord is still. Men come to help. Not many, just enough. You bring ropes, levers, flat logs to roll. The hull toward the water. Slowly, inch by inch, the ship moves. Wood creaks. Ropes stretch. You grunt. You heave. Your shoulder pops, but you keep going. When the keel finally kisses the water, it's like watching your own child walk for the first time. There is no applause, only the quiet sound of rippling water, the creak of timbers, and the wind catching on the fresh sail. The jarl inspects it. He says nothing, just nods once. That is all. That is enough. You stand there, arms crossed, covered in soot and sawdust and pitch, and watch it float. You feel nothing at first. Then, maybe later that night, after the fire dies down and your house is quiet and the wind is rising again outside, maybe then you'll feel something. Not pride, exactly. Not satisfaction, just the recognition that it held, that it didn't sink, that your hands made something that will outlive you. But tomorrow, another man will come asking for a boat, and you'll begin again, because this is what you do. You are a Viking shipbuilder, not a raider, not a warrior. Names sung in halls, but the sagas, every single one of them, begins because of you. Imagine yourself aboard a ship that no longer smells of pitch, but of salt, a week at sea. Then too, the world is gray in every direction. You feel the cold not as a bite, but as a constant hum through your bones, a kind of weight that settles into your jaw, your spine, your thoughts. The sea rolls gently now, but last night it was not so kind. You remember the sound of timbers groaning under pressure, the way the sky seemed to vanish between waves. You've stopped asking how many days are left. The men around you no longer speak unless needed. Salt has crusted on their beards. Their eyes are dull. The world narrows to routine, bail, eat, sleep, scan the horizon, and then, finally, it appears, a jagged line, pale green against the steel blue of sea and sky. Greenland, your destination, not a myth, not a promise, real land. A shore that rises slowly out of fog and dream. You do not cheer. You merely nod and reach for your cloak. This is not your home. But it must become one. You are one of the early Norse settlers, led by Erik the Red, sailing west from Iceland to escape feuds and find freedom. You are among those who chose exile over execution, uncertainty over revenge. Greenland was said to be fertile, a new place, a place untouched. But now, as the ship grinds onto shore, you feel doubt in your stomach. The hills are steep. The grass is thin. There are no trees, not like in Iceland. No great forests for fuel or shelter. The wind smells like snow and stone. Still, there is land, and you step onto it. The first nights are cold, colder than you imagined. You huddle with others under a makeshift awning stretched from the sail. You burn driftwood, then dried seaweed, then finally whale oil brought from Iceland. Everything smells like smoke and hunger. Your tasks begin immediately. You help unload the ship, barrels of dried fish, preserved butter, sheep and goats, kins, too, in rough baskets. The animals are restless. They sense the cold. Then you begin building shelters, turf walls, low roofs angled away from the wind. You dig into hillsides for warmth. The ground is frozen just below the surface. Your hands ache. Your nose runs constantly. To joke that this is paradise, no one laughs. Weeks pass. You gather lichen for fuel. You hunt seabirds. You learn to fish through holes in the ice. There are days when you eat nothing but seal blubber. You learn to chew it slowly, to let it soften in your mouth before swallowing. It coats your throat and stomach like a second skin. It keeps you alive. You tend to the livestock carefully. They eat dried seaweed, mostly. Some don't make it. You bury them in shallow graves, marked only with stones. The cold preserves the bodies. Foxes dig them up. You chase them away with sticks, but still you endure. Erik himself is a hard man, proud, broad-shouldered, with hair the color of rust. He speaks rarely, but works harder than most. When he speaks of Greenland, he uses the word home with a kind of stubbornness. He refuses to leave, and in his refusal, others follow. The summers are short but bright. The grass grows for a brief window of weeks, and during that time, the livestock eat well. You cut grass endlessly, piling it high, drying it on racks. Every blade matters. Every handful might mean life come winter. You store the hay in low stone barns. You double layer the walls. You patch every leak with moss. Why autumn comes fast? The skies darken. The sun no longer climbs high. Shadows stretch. Longer, the nights return, and so begins your second winter. Your second winter is harder than the first, though you know more now. You've built better walls. You've hung heavy hides over doorways to keep the cold out. The hearth is always burning, and you've learned to ration fuel and light. Still, there are days when the wind blows so fiercely that it whistles through even the smallest gaps, finding your skin no matter how you bundle yourself. You feel it in your fingertips, in your joints. Cold becomes more than sensation. It becomes your companion, a quiet, biting presence that reminds you of where you are. You learn to work indoors, carving bone tools, mending nets, twisting wool into thread by the firelight. Your fingers grow skilled, slow, methodical, steady. There is little else to do. In the dark months, stories are told, some from the old country, some born from this new land. They are not wild tales of dragons and glory, but softer things about fishing too far from shore, about seals that disappear under the ice, about children born in silence in the deep of winter. You hear about other farms nearby. Some have lost sheep, others people. A boy wandered off in a snowstorm. A woman didn't survive childbirth. There are no healers here, only mothers and knives. You don't see the sea often in winter. The shoreline is icebound, and wind whips across it like a blade. But you remember it. You remember the motion of the ship when you came here, the way the horizon seemed to breathe. You remember how far you are from everything. Norway, a dream. Greenland is now dot. Spring comes late. The thaw is uneven. Some days are warm, others sharp and brittle. The snow recedes slowly, revealing patches of brown earth, flattened grass and bones, goat bones, bird bones. You collect what you can and bury it respectfully, but you move on quickly. There is always more work. You plant barley, though the soil is poor and shallow. You pile seaweed into the earth, hoping it will nourish the roots. You don't expect much, just something, a few handfuls to add to the stores, a symbol that life can grow here. The animals are lean. Some gave birth during the thaw, scrawny, shivering young that cling to their mothers for warmth. You wrap them in wool. You feed them from your own stock. Every calf saved is another season secured. You hear rumors that another wave of settlers is coming, that Erik's son, Leif, speaks of traveling even farther west. Some say he dreams of a place beyond Greenland, a new land, richer, warmer. Others scoff. It is madness, they say. This land is barely livable. Why stretch thinner? But you do not concern yourself with distant voyages. You have stones to lift, roofs to patch, hooves to clean, meals to cook. Summer brings some relief. The air smells briefly of wildflowers and DMP, earth. The sun lingers at strange angles in the sky. At night, it barely fades, hanging like a low ember above the mountains. You take comfort in the light. It allows you to work late, to stretch the days longer, to hope that perhaps this season will be enough. You repair the boats. You mend the fishing lines. You travel to other farms to trade wool for iron nails, cheese for dried meat. There's laughter, even awkward, infrequent, but real. A baby is born healthy. A neighbor returns with a seal twice the size of a man. These small victories ripple through the community. Still, everyone prepares for the third winter. You cut grass again. Dry it again. It feels endless, and yet strangely familiar. This has become life, not exile, not punishment, simply life. The third winter comes not with fury, but with silence. There is no great storm, no shattering of ice or howling of spirits. Only a slow return of cold, a creeping stillness. You feel it in the air, a tightness in the lungs, a weight in the feet. The earth hardens again. The breath once more curls from mouths like ghosts. You have grown older. Your beard is streaked with gray. Your hands are cracked, not just from labor, but from time. Your eldest child helps you now, shoulders the axe when you go to cut what driftwood you can find. They know the path to the stream without asking. They know how to bind a wound, twist a rope, butcher a bird. They've never known anything else. The younger ones, the ones born here, ask strange questions. They don't remember Iceland. They speak of the sky as if it belongs only to this land. They name the cliffs. They imagine gods who wear sealskin and live beneath the ice. You do not correct them. Their stories are as valid as any told before. Some families leave. They board ships and try to return east, to Iceland, to Norway. Not all make it. The sea is cruel. Others stay, hoping for better seasons. Hoping still, you stay, and then the silence grows. A nearby farm no longer lights its fires at dusk. A man who went to trade has not returned. You find a house abandoned, roof half collapsed, tools left where they fell. A bowl still half full of dried fish. The inhabitants simply gone. No war, no plague, just absence. Years pass. The barley harvest shrinks. The fish move farther offshore. The seals arrive later each spring. The ice lingers longer each fall. A priest arrives once, long ago, to speak of Rome and salvation. He leaves before the next storm. The chapel he builds stands empty, its cross half buried in drifting snow. You write nothing down. There is no ink, no parchment, no scribe, but you remember. You tell your children the names of those who came before. You tell them of Erik the Red, of how he found this place, tamed it for a time, of how his son, Leif, sailed west and found another land, warm and wooded, but never stayed. You tell them stories at night, slow, steady, the way your father told them to you. And one day, you do not wake. You pass as quietly as the seasons. The turf house remains. The ship you helped build, long since broken by storms, lies as bones beneath the sea. The grass grows again, briefly, then withers. Snow covers the stone markers. The wind swallows the names. Centuries later, strangers will dig into this earth. They will find remnants, a spindle, a comb, the outline of walls. They will wonder what happened here, why you stayed, why you vanished. They will never know your name, but you were here. You lived, you endured, you endured, you hoped, and in the long, pale night, your story becomes part of the land itself, quiet, unrecorded, and finally, at peace. Imagine a cold morning by the fjord. Mist rises from the still water, curling like breath around the prow of a longship drawn up on the shore. The air carries the scent of salt, of moss, of smoke, and something quieter, something solemn. You are among those gathered for a burial, not of a king, not of a raider returned from war, but of a woman, an elder, a seeress. Her name was spoken in low tones, not from fear, but from reverence. She was one who knew herbs, omens, dreams. She helped deliver children and soothe the dying. She knew the sky. Be sent back to both. The ship is not large, a nair, broad and stable. It rests in a shallow pit carved into the earth, rimmed with stones. You helped dig it. The others laid thick turf around the edges to keep out the rain. The hull creaks, faintly in the morning chill, as if remembering its travels. Once it crossed to Iceland. Once it bore a cargo of wool and salt cod. Now it will carry only silence. She lies within, wrapped not in shrouds, but in layers of woven cloth, fine wool dyed with madder root. Her hands are folded across her chest. In one palm rests a bundle of herbs. In the other, a small pendant, etched with the rune of passage. Around her are objects, not riches, but tools. A spindle, a knife, a small iron key. These things matter. To bury a person in the Viking age was not to seal them away, but to prepare them for a journey. The dead walked to the afterlife. They needed shoes. They needed food. They needed what they loved, or what had loved them. Others bring gifts, a comb carved from bone, a piece of amber, a small drinking horn. Nothing grand, but each item chosen with care. There is no sermon, no priest, only words spoken by kin. You listen as the eldest daughter speaks softly, not loudly, not publicly. This is not for drama. Her voice is steady. She says she knew when the sun returned. She knew when the lambs would come. She is now where the snow does not fall. You feel the cold in your boots, in your fingers. The earth waits dot, then begins. The covering, layer after layer of soil, slowly, deliberately. Some throw handfuls, others use shovels. A few simply watch. By midday, only the rim of the ship's curve is visible. By evening, even that is gone. But in your mind's eye, the ship is still there, beneath your feet, sailing, now under the earth. You return home in silence. Your boots are muddy, your fingers numb, but something in your chest feels settled, as if a stone has been gently lowered into the quiet bed of a stream. There is grief, yes, but also understanding. The burial was not an ending, not to the people of your village, not to you. For those who live close to the land, and closer still to the sea, death is not a door, but a shoreline, and, like any shoreline, it may be crossed in a vessel. That's why they build ship burials. Some are simple, like the one you helped dig, shallow holes lined with goods. Others, great undertakings. True ships laid in the earth or burned at sea, sometimes accompanied by animals, tools, even servants. The higher the status, the more elaborate the preparation. But the core is the same. The belief that the dead continue, that they journey on. The gods of the Norse were not distant figures, unreachable in golden heavens. They walked, they fought. They died. They were fallible, fierce, intimately tied to the cycles of nature. Odin wise, but ever hungry for knowledge. Thor, protector, but quick to anger. Freya, who chose among the fallen, who knew both battle and birth. And there were others, spirits of the land, guardians of the homestead, creatures that lived between the roots of trees or beneath stones. The dead did not disappear. They lingered. Sometimes they returned, not as ghosts, but as memories, dreams, even warnings. That is why the grave must be right. You remember the old stories. A man who buried his brother without gifts and dreamt, night after night, of cold hands knocking at the door. A woman who lit no fires on her husband's grave mound and found her hearth would no longer burn. You've heard of mounds that hum in the wind, that sheep refuse to graze near, places where the dead are uneasy. But you've also seen the other side, a home built near an old grave, always warm, always protected. Children born healthy, livestock thriving. The presence of a well-laid spirit, content to remain in the soil, offering silent blessing. It is no wonder that the burial of ships mattered so deeply. The ship was the soul, long, enduring, born of oak and iron, a thing that moved, that carried, that resisted decay. Even when burned, the bones of the ship lingered in the ashes. Even when buried, its outline remained in the soil. Archaeologists, centuries later, will find them. The Oseberg ship, the Gokstad ship, the Thun ship, hulls pulled from the soil, nearly intact. Tools beside bones, buckets, sleds, carts, fine textiles, now faded, but once vibrant, chests filled with spices from distant lands, boards carved with dragons, with knots, with runes. They speak without words. They speak of care, of belief, of a society that invested not only in life, but in what came after. You imagine one grave in particular, the woman in Oseberg, a high-status burial beneath a mound nearly 40 feet wide. 2 women lay inside, one older, likely noble or powerful, the other younger, possibly an attendant. With them, 15 horses, 6 beds, dozens of wooden chests, silk from the East, apples, kitchen tools, a ceremonial cart, no weapons, no armor, but power, nonetheless. Even in death, the journey mattered. And the preparations for that journey revealed everything about the living. As time passes, the graves settle, the grass returns. Generations walk by without knowing what lies beneath. But some still remember. You do. You find yourself visiting that place from time to time, not out of duty, but out of rhythm, as if some part of you knows when to go, when the season turns, when the wind shifts, when the frost recedes from the stones. There's comfort there, quiet. You bring small offerings, a few berries, a strip of wool, a carved bead, not because you must. There's no one left to see, but because it feels right. A conversation continued, even in silence. Others have changed. The young no longer carve runes. They speak of one god now, a singular figure from distant shores, with robes and books and fireless heavens. Priests have come again. They speak of sin and salvation. They cut down sacred trees. They build churches. Still, not all forget. You have seen how, even now, graves are made near streams, near stones, near the sea. You have seen crosses marked with patterns older than Christ. A quiet blending, a layering of belief. The ship buried beneath the cross. The prayer said alongside the song, "You are old now. Your hands tremble when you tie knots. Your knees ache when you rise, but your mind is clear. You remember every burial you've seen, every flame, every mound, the names of the dead. Their tools, their ships, and you begin to wonder about your own resting place. Will they build you a mound? Will they wrap you in wool? Place a tool by your hand. Will they remember the way you laughed when the fish wouldn't bite? The way you told stories of the sea gods on cold nights? You do not fear death. You've lived beside it too long for that. What matters now is shape, memory, return. You, crude. You ask that they bury you near the fjord. Not too high, the winds are cruel up there. Not too low, the tides rise in spring. Somewhere in between, where the land dips just slightly, where the grass bends westward, where the sun touches the stones in the late evening. You ask for no riches, just your knife, your walking stick, and a sliver of the ship's hull you once helped build long ago, before you grew too old to sail. They agree, and so the day comes. The sun is pale. The air smells of lichen and morning frost. The earth is soft from recent rain. You are laid in a small boat, lined with furs, surrounded by familiar faces, some young, some not. Someone sings. The words are old, the notes slow. You don't know if it's a hymn or a lullaby. And then you are still. Later, the boat disappears beneath the soil. But the story doesn't. You join the thousands buried beneath these lands, not nameless, but unspoken, not forgotten, but folded into the rhythm of things. The gods of the earth hold you now, the same gods who watch the frost form and melt, who carry seeds on the wind, who stir the water and hush the trees. In time, the ship rots, the bones crumble, but the shape remains, an outline in the soil, a memory in the hill. And one day, long after even your children are gone, someone will dig here. They will uncover what's left, a scrap of iron, a carved bead, a piece of haldot, and they will wonder, who were you? Where did you go? And in the hush of the museum, in the soft light of the archive, you will continue your journey one more time, carried again, a ship beneath the earth. Imagine yourself walking through the twilight cold, your breath trailing behind you in slow, pale ribbons. As you approach the longhouse of the JRL, it rises from the earth like a great wooden beast, low, wide, crowned with a steep, thatched. Roof, smoke coils from the center, not frantic or thick, but steady, the kind that promises warmth. The walls are high and close, built of dark timbers smoothed by hand, oiled with fish, fat, and soot. The door is solid, carved, and creaks open, not with fanfare, but with weight. Inside, the light is dim and gold from fire, from tallow candles, from the red runge glow of coals. The air is thick with the smell of roasted meat, of wool, of wood smoke, of something faintly sweet, perhaps honey, perhaps decay. This is the smell of life lived long in one room. The hall is not loud, not yet, but it murmurs. People sit on benches, cloaked in fur and shadow. The jarl sits higher, near the head of a long table. He is not adorned in crowns or jewels, only in layers of woven cloth, and the quiet confidence of someone who owns everything he surveys. His voice is low when he speaks, but people lean in when he does. You find a place near the middle of the room. The bench is hard, but the warmth creeps in quickly from the hearth, from the bodies beside you, from the cup of mead passed hand to hand. It is not clear who brought the mead or where it began, but it moves like a tide, slow, golden, inevitable. There is no beginning to the feast, not a signal or bell, but the pace changes, all the same. Bread is broken, bowls passed up trenchers, scraped clean. Meat is served lamb, goat, perhaps fish, flat cakes, a stew that tastes faintly of onions and salt. You eat slowly, not out of politeness, but out of care. There will not be more. The jarl raises a cup. He says little, perhaps just a name, someone fallen or returned. A murmur of assent follows. Cups lifted, sips taken. It is not about the words. It is about the silence between them. Stories begin, small ones at first. A man recounts a stubborn goat. Another talks of a journey to the next fjord. The hall is not filled with laughter, yet only listening. And then, as more mead flows, the tone changes. Voices lift. Hands gesture. Eyes shine. Now the sagas arrive. Tales of raids, of distant islands, of kings who fell, of ships that split and were patched mid-sea, of men who fought bare-chested in storms and lived to toast their victories. You do not know what is true. You do not need to. The telling is enough. The rhythm, the echoes, the rise and fall of the voice against a hush of the hearth. And as the stories rise, so does something else, a sense of old debts remembered, a glance across the room. A pause before a name is spoken. You sense that beneath the stories, something older stirs. Rivalries, histories, grievances not quite buried, but it waits. For now, there is warmth, there is bread, there is meat torn by hand and shared between friends and not friends alike. The night has only begun. You sit quietly for a time, cup in hand, your eyes tracing the shapes cast by firelight on the timber-bird beams above. Smoke clings near the rafters, dancing slowly, as if the ceiling itself is exhaling with the rhythm of the stories being told. Below, all around you, the banquet continues, not in courses or ceremony, but in pulses of presence. The room breathes. It shifts, and beneath it all, you begin to sense something deeper. This is no simple feast. It is a meeting of power. The jarl, seated at the raised dais, speaks little, but every glance, every word he does say, lands with weight. Those near him do not laugh as loudly. They watch, always gauging his mood. Every gesture is a statement. Every bowl passed is political. The seating itself is a map of hierarchy. Those closest to the fire hold the jarl's favor. The doors, less so, even in warmth. Power has temperature. You observe how people defer, how a man offering the jarl a slice of meat bows slightly as he sets it down. How another, older man tells a story that flatters the jarl's father. Not the jarl himself, carefully invoking memory rather than rivalry. This is not submission. It is navigation. To dine in the longhouse is to move through a landscape of alliances. A joke may bond to families. A missed toast might fracture a bond that took years to mend. A story told at the wrong moment might open a wound no healer can close. Some speak in riddles. Others flatter with gifts, a carved bone comb, a new song, a foreign trinket, and with it, boldness. A younger man, strong-shouldered, red-cheeked, tells a tale of the last summer's voyage. He names names. He recounts battles. He boasts. Too much. You feel the shift before the room does. The jarl's expression stills. The hall quiets, not abruptly, but gradually, like a wave pulling back from the shore. The young man speaks of his blade, of the man he struck down, and then glances toward another at the opposite end of the bench. That man looks down. He smiles, but it is not warmth. This is the danger of the feast. Old feuds sit beside fresh. Mead, pride stirs embers left from raids past. Brothers killed. Dowries stolen. Ships rammed in fog dod. It's in this moment that the jarl speaks. Only a few words, a name, a comment about grain, a reminder of the harvest to come. But the message is clear. This is not the night. The threat recedes. The younger man bows slightly. His next drink is smaller. The tension lifts slowly, like mist leaving a field. The room exhales. Later, the jarl's wife offers a toast. She stands, calm, her braid silvered with age and smoke. She speaks not of battle or bravery, but of mothers, of spinning wheels, of the quiet work done while the ships are gone. Her voice is not loud, but it carries. This, too, is power dot in the longhouse. Strength wears many faces, some fierce, others soft. A jarl may rule by axe, but his hall survives. By listening, the fire is fed again. Sparks leap upward. The light is dimmer now, and the songs begin. Low, at first, half spoken, half sung. Stories with rhythm instead of rhyme. Of Odin's wanderings, of Freya's tears, of wolves at the edge of dreams. You let yourself drift, not asleep, not fully awake, your thoughts carried like smoke toward the rafters. There is one more phase to come, the hour of confession, of reckoning, of ancient truths remembered. But for now, you sit and listen. The fire burns lower now. Its light flickers along the walls, leaving some faces hidden, others gilded in fading gold. The logs hiss and settle. The mead bowls are lighter. The songs grow slower, older, no longer of battles, but of longing, of homecomings that never came, of children lost, of dreams left behind in the dark folds of the ocean. The laughter, earlier so loud and rising, now hums low like a river under ice. You look around and see what the feast has truly become. Not a celebration, but a memory. This is what the longhouse does best. It gathers not just people, but time. The jarl is older than he was at sunset. So are you. So are they all. And not because of the drink or the fire, but because they have remembered too much. A man with a lined face begins to speak. No preamble, no announcement. He speaks of his brother, of a winter long past, of a hunt that turned to loss. The room does not interrupt. No one leans forward, but everyone listens, because they understand. One by one, others speak, not for glory now, but for weight, for release, for truth. The stories no longer compete, they console. A woman speaks of her son, gone to winters now. A young man tells of a dream, a ship of bones on a river of stars. Another hums a tune only he remembers, and it seems to come from somewhere deeper than his chest, as though the hall itself is singing through him. Even the jarl listens now, his hands still, his eyes unfocused, not judging, just hearing, and then silence, no command, no gesture, just the hush that follows when everything that needed to be said has been spoken. People begin to rise, slowly, stiffly. Some exchange nods. A few clasp shoulders. One or two weep, not from sorrow, but from the strange, soft ache of something unspoken, finally leaving the body. You remain for a moment longer. The hall is nearly empty now. The jarl is gone, vanished into his private chamber behind the hearth, while the flames flicker lower. Only one candle burns, a stub, its wax pooled around the base like melted snow. You let the quiet in. Let the wood speak. Let the stones remember. Then, finally, you stand. You step outside into the cold night where the stars bloom like frost across the black sky. The grass is stiff beneath your boots. Your breath curls before you like steam rising from the earth. You do not speak. There is nothing left to say. But in your chest, something has changed. Not loud, not bright, but steady. Like the coals of the longhouse hearth, not extinguished, only sleeping, and that, perhaps, is the heart of it. The Viking world was not all blood and iron. It was not all conquest and clash. It was this, too. Quiet bread, warm mead, soft sorrow, and the silence of shared memory. You walk slowly through the frost, back toward your own small home. The feast is done, but the story remains. And so, the fire fades. We have walked a long road tonight, not across oceans or into battle, but through the quieter corners of the Viking world. Through forests felled by hand, through shipyards heavy with sawdust and silence, paths behind funeral carts, into longhouses lit not with treasure but with memory. We have stood in sawdust and salt. We have listened to old voices, lifted in toast and in grief. We have followed the shape of ships, both on the water and beneath the earth. And what have we found? Not glory, not heroism, not the clang of swords or the fury of raids, but something slower, more human, more real. We have seen hands cracked and cold, pulling rope through frozen pitch. We have felt the ache of splinters, of hunger, of silence. We have tasted the smoke of evening feasts and heard the quiet sorrow of those left behind. Because the Viking world, like our own, was never just one thing. It was harsh, and it was holy. It was cruel, and it was communal. It was fire, and it was frostbitten. There were songs and blood feuds. There were gods of thunder and of harvest. There were funerals that lasted days, and feasts that blurred into morning. And at the center of it all, people like you, who worked, who remembered, who endured. So now, as the final embers glow dim, and the breath of the longhouse settles into sleep, let the cold winds stay outside. Let the stories settle. Let the weight of the past become warmth in your present. You are safe here. The ships are moored. The fire is low. The doors are barred against the dark dot. And in your dreams, if you should wander the fjords, or walk once more beneath the stars of the north, know that you are not alone. You walk among memory now, and memory is gentle. Sleep well,